Chevrolet entered the mid-size market in 1964, when it got its own version of the continually bigger senior compact that other GM divisions had been offering since 1961. It was created in response to the Ford Fairlane of 1962 and named Chevelle to indicate it was a smaller Chevrolet, fitting between the standard Chevy models and the compact Chevy 2. It was 194 inches long on a 115-inch wheelbase, although the wagon was 5 inches longer, as was the wagon-based El Camino utility coupe. Weight ranged from 3,000 to 3,400 pounds, with prices in the realm of $2,200 to $2,900. Packages were the base 300, mid-range 300 Deluxe, and the top-end Malibu, named for the Southern California beach community, itself being named for a type of surfboard. And soon, a Malibu Super Sport was also offered, which included bucket seats, center console, and a gauge cluster. Engines included a 3.2-liter 194 cubic inch high thrift or 3.8-liter 230 cubic inch turbo thrift 6 with 120 or 155 horsepower. Initially with a 4.6-liter 283 V8 with 195 to 220 horsepower, and mid-year a 5.4-liter 327 with 250 to 300 horsepower was added. Base models used a 3-speed manual, but options included 2 or 3-speed automatic or 4-speed manual. A 327 Super Sport 4-speed did 60 in just over 6 seconds, the quarter mile in under 15, and could reach 125 miles an hour. First-year sales were nearly 290,000, mostly Malibus, including more than 75,000 Super Sports. 1965 saw minor styling updates, as well as a 350 horsepower version of the 327, and a 375 horsepower, 480 pound-foot of torque, 6.5-liter 396, which raised top speed to nearly 140 and reduced the quarter mile to just over 14 seconds. The cars were restyled for 1966, gaining 3 inches in length and about 100 pounds. The 396 Super Sport would become its own series, separate from the Malibu, not only having distinct trim, but reinforced suspension, with 350 to 375 horsepower. A minor facelift for 1967 also saw top versions of both the 327 and the 396 drop 25 horsepower, but front disc brakes and an 8-track player were optional. The all-new styling for 1968 was a more rounded semi-fastback design. 2 doors were down to a 112-inch wheelbase and 197 inches long, while sedans were up to a 116-inch wheelbase and 201 inches long, and wagons were 6 inches longer. The 230 was now the base engine, with 140 horsepower, and there was a bigger 4.1-liter 250 with 155 horsepower. Base V8 was a 5-liter 307 with 200 horsepower. The 327 could be had in 275 to 325 horsepower versions, and the 396 in 325 to 350 horsepower versions. A Concours luxury package upgraded the interior and included the center console of the Super Sport. Starting price ranged from $2,300 to $3,100, and sales were over $385,000. Minor upgrades for 1969 included a new safer interior, with the ignition moving from the dash to the column, with standard headrests, as well as the turbo hydromatic becoming available on non-Super Sport models. The vent windows went away on 2-door models, while the 327 was replaced by a 5.7-liter 350 with 255 to 300 horsepower. Use of central office production orders meant just over 320 Chevelles were fitted with a 425 horsepower 7-liter 427, including 99 Yanko cars. Styling was updated again in 1970. Base models were now simply Chevelles, and upper trim levels Malibus. You could still get a Super Sport 396, and now there was a Super Sport 454, although the Super Sport 396 was now actually powered by a 6.6-liter 402 with 330 to 350 horsepower, while the Super Sport 454's 7.4-liter produced 360 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, unless it was the LS6, which bumped output to 450 horsepower, making for speeds around 140 miles an hour and a quarter mile easily under 14 seconds, with the automatic. The 4-speed was even quicker. The cars got a facelift for 1971, giving up the quad headlights. but gaining round taillights. Chevy advertised both gross and net horsepower to help ease the shock of the pending change. The base 250 straight six was rated at 145 gross, or 110 horsepower net. The 307 was 200 gross and 140 net, and the 350 245 to 270 gross, or 165 to 175 net, which was now offered in a Super Sport package. The 402 was 300 gross horsepower, or 260 net, and the 454 365 to 425 gross, or 285 to 325 net. There were only minor changes for 1972, including the gross ratings going away. But the cars were completely restyled for 1973, with more room, better visibility, and more safety features, as well as available swivel seats. The two-door was now 201 inches long, and the four-door 207, and the wagon 213. Weight ranged from 3,500 for a base six-cylinder coupe to 4,500 for a 454 Super Sport wagon with an automatic. The Super Sport 396 and 402 were gone, but sales were still around 385,000 for the year, while a Super Sport 454 was now rated at 245 net horsepower, so even the coupe was only a high 15-second car. Trim levels were now Deluxe, Malibu, and Laguna, after another California Beach and Raceway, which included a distinct polyurethane nose with body-colored bumpers. It would be the last year for the round taillights. Prices were beginning to climb, now $2,700 to $3,800, but sales were still over $385,000. Trim levels changed again for 1974 to Malibu and Malibu Classic with a more formal grille, while the Super Sport was replaced by the Laguna S3, in essence a handling package. The 307 was discontinued. Soon, a 6.6-liter 400 would be added, initially with 150 to 180 horsepower. For 1975, the Laguna S3 got a new nose with improved aerodynamics, and mid-year the 454 would be dropped. 1976 added a 5-liter 305 with 140 horsepower and 245 pound-feet of torque. It would be the last year of the Laguna S3, which shared the Monte Carlo instrument cluster. There was, however, a new SE version for 1977. That was an appearance and handling package, but only 50 were made. The 400 was also dropped, making the 170 horsepower 354 barrel the top engine for a mid-18-second quarter mile, an engine which remains standard on the wagon. The cars were downsized for 1978, with the Chevelle name no longer being used. All four body styles being about 193 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase and 3,100 to 3,400 pounds, priced from $4,200 to $4,900. But they still managed to increase head, leg, and cargo space, except in the wagon and the El Camino. Engines included a 95 horsepower 3.3-liter 201, 105 horsepower 3.8-liter 231 V6, or the 145 horsepower 5-liter 305 V8. Which was a mid-17-second car with the 4-speed, making it quicker than the outgoing car. Sales would be near $360,000 for the year, climbing well over $400,000 the following year. 1979 added a 4.4-liter 267 V8 with 125 horsepower, and 1980 a 9C1 police package returned to the line, while the smaller V6 was discontinued. The cars would get a facelift for 1982 that included quad headlights. The two-door was dropped, and an 85 horsepower 4.3-liter diesel was added, although the car was technically replaced by the smaller front-wheel drive Celebrity that year. It would still continue through 1984, and as the El Camino through 1987. But the Malibu name would return to the segment in 1997, along with a new stylized Malibu logo. It was 190 inches long on a 107-inch wheelbase and weighed 3,100 pounds. Starting price was between $16,000 and $19,000. Base engine was 150 horsepower, 155 pound-foot of torque, 2.4-liter inline 4, with an optional 155 horsepower, 185 pound-foot of torque, 3.1-liter V6. The V6 was nearly half a second quicker at just under 17 seconds in the quarter mile. Reviews were mixed, earning a Car of the Year award while getting criticized by other sources. For 2000, the V6 would be up to 170 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque, and the 4 would be dropped. There would be a new Malibu for 2004, but the existing model carried over for 2 years as the Malibu Classic, using a 144 horsepower 2.2-liter Ecotec 4, which was also the base engine on the new Malibu. While the higher trim LS and LT models used a 3.5-liter 207 horsepower V6. Based on the Opel Vectra, the car was 188 inches long on a 212-inch wheelbase and 3,200 pounds. Prices were $19,000 to $22,000. Available as a sedan or as the Malibu Max hatchback that was marketed as a wagon. The cars received a facelift in 2006, and there would be a new Supersport model that used a 3.9-liter V6 with 240 horsepower, making it a mid-15-second car with 140-mile-an-hour top speed. There would be a new Malibu for 2008, but once again the old one carried over as the Classic, although only the sedan and only for 1 year. The new car was thoroughly revised and better equipped, including an optional 6-speed automatic. Trim levels were LS, LT, LTZ, and hybrid, now 192 inches long and 3,400 to 3,600 pounds. And in spite of a smaller interior, they gained much critical acclaim. Base engine was a 2.4-liter inline-4 with 169 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque, with an optional 3.6-liter V6 with 252 horsepower and 251 pound-feet of torque. But the hybrid would be dropped after its second year. In 2011, the 6-speed automatic became standard, and the cars gained several new electronic features. The cars would be significantly updated again in 2013 with all new styling, and the number of packages more than doubled, partially because the Malibu was now being sold in a wide range of markets internationally, and not just as a Chevrolet, with a diverse selection of engines depending on where it was being sold, which may have included a 2-liter turbo diesel, but not in the U.S., although a mild hybrid did return to the line. Gas 4-cylinders were offered in 2-liter turbo, 2.4-liter, and 2.5-liter, with horsepower ranging from 164 to 259 for the turbo. There was also a 3-liter V6 with 256 horsepower. Most were 192 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase and around 3,600 pounds, with prices from $23,000 to $28,000. A 2-liter turbo could get through the quarter mile in under 15 seconds and exceed 145 miles an hour. Mid-2014, the cars would see several updates that included additional features, an improved transmission, and in some markets outside the U.S., a minor facelift. This version would only last through 2015 in the U.S., but some markets used it for up to 4 more years, while the U.S. and some other markets got a new Malibu for 2016. Trim levels were simplified down to L, LS, LT, and Premier, priced from $23,000 to $29,000. You could get a 1.5-liter turbo with 160 horsepower and a 6-speed automatic, or upgrade to a 2-liter turbo with 250 horsepower and an 8-speed automatic, a mid-14-second car with a top speed over 155. Soon, a full hybrid version was offered using a 1.8-liter 4. 2019 would see a minor refresh with a new RS package that included dual exhaust and upgraded wheels. The base L package would see additional standard features for 2020, only to be dropped 2 years later, with the Premier becoming the 2LT for 2023. Since its reintroduction in 1997, sales have typically remained between 160,000 to 210,000. Although it has recently fallen below that, it remains one of the top-selling sedans in the U.S. But as its competitors continue to disappear, that doesn't seem to mean as much. The Malibu will continue through 2024, but is likely to be canceled in 2025, being one of the last mid-sized American cars, at least for the foreseeable future. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below, and like and subscribe.